Simon, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here. I know we'll shortly be diving into all things meditation and mindfulness. However, before we jump into that side of things, would you mind introducing yourself to the audience? I know you've got a diverse background and would love to hear all about it.
Hey Rob, firstly, thank you very much for inviting me as a guest on the Vitality Pro podcast. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I think I have got a bit of a diverse background in terms of my life and my work life. So I grew up in Newport in South Wales, as many people did, years ago. Grew up on a council estate, and we didn't really have a lot as a family, but it just tended to work. Everybody that you lived in the area where you lived were all kind of in the same position.
Same
So,
boat, yeah.
And we had this element of freedom where we were able to be out and about and not have the worries that maybe some of the children have today. And then at 13, our life changed. So my father was diagnosed with cancer, and within 6 weeks, that was it. He was 41 years of age. My mother was 35, had 4 children, age 14, 13. I think my brother was 7 and my sister was 3. So, our lives kind of changed at that point. Cancer was kind of a thing then, but not massively known. You're talking like, it was actually 32 years ago today, actually, that he passed. So our life kind of changed. And what happened then was my father asked me a question then, or asked me to do something, and my brother, which was to look after our mother and our siblings, really. And that's kind of where it went from there. So then I ended up being somebody that created this real big work ethic, and I had many jobs from the age of 13 really up to 23. So even though at the age of 16 I started an apprenticeship with Land Rover, I still from 13 to 23, 24 always had a minimum of 3 jobs. So I was just working, and really trying to break free of the life that we had, where we didn't have a lot. So I had this attachment to, if I work hard, we'll get the freedom, I can look after my family. And that's kind of what I did. And in that time then, at the age of 16, I got my apprenticeship. And at the age of 35, I'd been with Land Rover for 19 years. I'd gone from being an apprentice mechanic to a leader of a business, which is everything I said I was going to do. In those years, I'd had my son, Brandon, with my first, with his mother, which was a different relationship to who I'm married to now. And yeah, that was kind of, life was just happening as it does for people. At a house, a child, a career. And I was ticking all the boxes that we were all supposed to tick, really. Then as time went on, I separated from Brandon's mother, and I also developed a heart condition, which I had atrial fibrillation, atrial flutter, and tachycardia. So with that, my heart would race about 250 on a regular basis. So I found myself all of a sudden living with this kind of heart condition from the age of around about probably 28. Had this heart condition I was struggling with every day. I was on medication, and through that period of time, I've had an operation in 2010 and an operation in 2019, which neither of them really worked, but we've got it settled down now, and my life is a bit more, or a lot more normal than it was for a long time. But over this period of time, I've got married to Jamie Lee, my wife. We've been together now for 15 years and married for 10. We also have 2 children, Ashton and Riley. So we have 3 boys between us all together, which is, fantastic. They're full of joy. My eldest boy is 20 years of age, and my youngest is 8. So there's also an age range of living life again, I suppose you could say. Um, but at the age of 35, I decided to make a change and leave my corporate career and move to Switzerland, which I did. And I went to live in Zurich for a short period of time, trying something new. And when I came back, I had a newfound, um, the best way to put it really, view of the world. I had a newfound view of the world because over there, I was able then to find my authenticity. Even though it was only over there for 6 months, the authentic Simon started coming through. And I realized how much I was operating on a daily basis back in the UK, in the career, in this belief system that I built up in, to actually who I really was. Because as soon as I got into a place where nobody knew me, I didn't feel I had to keep up any appearances. And then the real me came through. So when I came back from Switzerland, I then ended up in a position where um, I was just different. I was just different the way I was, my attitude to learning, really, and trying to be more, talking about my potential and abundance of opportunity. My whole thought process was different to how I operated. Um, and then over those last 10 years, I found um, more of a skill set in developing human culture in businesses and specializing in business transformation and turnaround. Working in business as an entrepreneur, in which then I invested in Samten and became the CEO of Samten, where I sit today. And yeah, that's kind of a little overview of my life, really.
Yeah, that's amazing. I just sort of, yeah, I've definitely spoken to a few people recently who sort of who've grown up in this sort of a council state sort of environment. I think you're the first one to actually sort of paint it in. I mean, I'm not to say that it wasn't maybe the best environment to grow up in, but you definitely sort of highlighted the fact that there was a community in that, at least initially. And I think although maybe the circumstances weren't ideal, that is quite special in a way. I don't know what you think, but I think community is something we just solely as lack as a society today, which I think drives a lot of issues for a lot of people, and especially this whole thing about sort of loneliness and isolation. Did you find that in your formative years that there was that sort of community there, even though, as you I think you put it, you're all in the same position? Were you able to sort of come together in that respect?
Yeah, 100%. I think my kids today when they go out, we've got Find My Child, or I think it's called on our iPhone, where we can track them, and we're
Yeah.
worried about what's happening, the dangers. There were dangers back then, maybe not publicized because of the way social media wasn't present and the internet wasn't where it is today. However, we would go out and we come back when the lights came on, right? And I would go in just in a row. We had Margaret, one of my mother's friends, and our friends. I'd be going in there, I'd pop in, I'd just maybe put my hand in the biscuit tin and say hello, and I go to the next house, and like everybody knew everybody. There was a 100% respect for adults, for elders when you walk down the street, and you did feel like a community. So although we didn't have a lot, we went to food banks. I witnessed a lot going on with my parents arguing over money all the time. We had some of our Christmases were great, but the other 364 days were hard. you know, because although you had community and everybody's in a similar space, when you're living in that and, your Christmas day is made up of Provident loans and Shopper Check loans and Kay's catalogue and Littlewood's catalogue and, IOUs with everybody that will let you have one. As you got a little bit older, probably when I got to 9 or 10, I started realizing that what we were getting for a year for Christmas actually cost us a whole year of like peace, I suppose, because anything that we would be doing or talking about um, would be money and work and money and bills and debts that need to be paid. So, yeah, there was probably a two-pronged attack there where you were going through that, but when you went out the street, everyone was smiling, everyone was happy, everyone's in the same position. There was no comparison. We were all just living the same life, and that felt good.
Yeah, no, it is really powerful, and that's obviously not to take away from the struggles. Of course, I don't think money buys happiness, but it definitely sort of buys the freedom to not worry about having to be able to provide for your family, or to be able to go, and it just helps alleviate that sort of stress. As you know, very little will sort of drive your stress levels up, or destroy your health faster than that sort of financial pressure. So yeah, no, it's definitely something to sort of be aware of. But yeah, I think what I was just trying to sort of point to is maybe that silver lining of that community, which is definitely something, again, like I mentioned, that we are missing today.
Yeah, I completely agree with
Yeah.
that.
Simon, before we dig into the guts, actually, that's a poor choice of words. Let me let me rephrase that. Before we sort of dive into the conversation today, and actually, that's also cliched. All right, let's just go with it. I'd love to sort of talk about your recent experience with Awake. Now, I know. I don't know to what extent you were involved in putting it together, but I do know that our mutual friend Andrew McLaughlin, along with Jamie, his second name escapes me.
Jamie
Yeah,
Watkins. Yeah.
were instrumental in putting the whole event together. And for those in the audience who maybe don't know, Awake, from my understanding of it, is sort of a getaway or a retreat, maybe, for the want of a better word, that aims to sort of help individuals sort of break through mental barriers, and discover how to sort of move forwards in life, especially from Andrew's side with the transformational coaching. And I know there was blood work involved, and some physical parameters that were measured as well. But could you sort of speak to your experience with the event, though, maybe how involved and what you took away from it?
Yeah, 100%. So Awake. All I can say really to start off is wow. Like this, I've been in the wellness space for a little while in terms of maybe just getting an understanding of myself, because that's all we ever will really understand is ourselves more than anything else. Um, and Andrew and Jamie are very good friends of mine, and Jamie kind of gave birth to this idea that he would have a a community which was just Jamie and friends. So it'd be just him, no titles, no
That's lovely.
egos,
It's
you
very
know.
Welsh.
Yeah, Um, and with myself and Andy and other people being very close with Jamie, Jamie was very keen to have some of us on board. Now, for myself, I didn't have the time really to commit um, to what was needed really to pull something like this off. Where Andrew and Jamie very much put a lot of effort into it, and they really designed something that is different. It is different. We're not just on a retreat. We're reconnecting to source, and that source is us. And kind of what they delivered across the whole of the event really was conscious connection. It really was, but conscious connection to ourselves and conscious connection to others. And that was like for everybody a really special moment, because once you got in there, it wasn't probably until all of us got home that we got out of it. We connected and stayed connected every day, all day, through over coffee in the morning, through the walks we were on, through the yoga, the meditation, the rope work, the breath work, the learning center. And one of a breakthrough I had actually, which was quite a big breakthrough for me. Everyone had one. And I was simmering on it for a little while. And then when I was there, I got it when I was doing my facilitation of my talk. And it was that we talked about my father passing, obviously 32 years ago today. So let's say 32 years ago minus 2 weeks was the last time that I spoke to my father, 2 weeks before he passed. And at that age, I'd made a decision, a conscious decision with my mum to say, I don't want to see my father again because I could see him changing. And I didn't want to see him any different way than what I knew him. And when I think back now of like my middle boy is 13, I like to think of him making those decisions. I can't quantify it. However, on that last time I seen my father, I sat there with my brother, Peter, and he said, promise me you will look after your mother and your siblings. He said, your brother and sister. At which point I said, I will. And for 30 years, up until 2 years ago when my mother passed away, I realized I lived that, Rob. I lived it, right? In all my decisions, although me and my siblings might have fell out a little bit, me and my mother a little bit at different times, I put them first over everything, over my relationships, over my career, whatever was needed financially, emotionally. I'd done my best to show up at all times to fulfill this promise, right? And when I was speaking, I kind of realized that I'd never really managed to put all the pieces together. I'd always say to people, maybe come from a more egoic standpoint, I don't know, of like, oh yeah, I did this, I did that. And then I'd look at my relationship, my marriage that had broke down once or twice, and I look at previous relationships, and I look at sacrifices that I made. But all in all, it was all about I made a promise to my dad, and I'm going to keep it. And it was only really when my mother passed away, things started to change. I started to feel a different light. I didn't feel as um, drawn to make sure that everybody else was okay over myself. And I was almost prepared to let go of things a bit more. And in a wake, that was probably my breakthrough. I really managed to crystallize that into an understanding that my father never meant it the way I took it. And as human beings, we take things sometimes how we believe they're said, not as they're said. And that then affects us into making judgment and decisions that are not right. And there's no way my father, at me being 13, expected me to spend 30 years doing that. He meant it probably in just do me a favor, kids, look after your mother and your brother and sister.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting, and I suppose just looking at it, that's how your 13-year-old self would maybe understand that. I mean, you don't understand that sort of nuance as you do as an adult, do you? You don't understand that, um, speaking as an adult, that there isn't as much pressure when you don't have that sort of relative understanding of the world, and your little bubble is your family, and and that's it. Then I suppose as a child, it's very easy to just look at something like that, look at your father's instructions, and just sort of take it on as gospel, and then sort of carry that through. And I think, yeah, looking back at my own childhood, sort of retrospectively, I mean, there were definitely sort of um, similar issues, or not issues, but occurrences in my own childhood. And just retrospectively looking back at them, I just sort of think, wow, I just cooked that completely the wrong way. Not in the negative sense, but it just from the perspective of that's all I knew, if you're following, if I'm making any
Yeah,
sense.
100%. Yeah.
And then you sort of, get to this sort of, well, I wouldn't call myself an adult. I think I've grown a bit more since then, but not much. Um, but you sort of come to this realization, that actually, no, that's not what my childhood was supposed to be, or maybe that's not what that parent meant. And that just, I think, is something that generally comes with at least some level of, yeah, growing up is the wrong term, but yeah, sort of evolving as a human being. And but yeah, I mean, if you're able to take that away, that's incredible. I think that's magic.
It is. And I think a lot of people had breakthroughs there. But more so, it was the education piece. It's almost like you don't know what you don't know, right? And, you know, and as Andrew says it really well, actually, I think it was Laz Sue was said it as not knowing is knowing. There's so many ways to look at the world, but when you find that deeper understanding of self and trying to really connect with you, you actually find it easier to let go and come to terms with things. So yeah, I would say for anybody, whether they was awake or another was similar, it's definitely something that is transformative and will sit with you. And when you talk about community, those of us that went, we will have a connection now for the rest of our lives, because it was such a tight, conscious moment over those days that we couldn't not be connected now. It was special. And it's all about the diamonds inside of us. It's all about our wisdom and our intuition and who we really are, that gets clouded over by the psychology and the belief system that we are bred into, that we build up ourselves. And then we think with our thoughts, but we're not our thoughts. We never really use feeling anymore because it's all in thinking. And when you strip all that back and all that psychology back, and you just go back to you, you know, I suppose my moment of that happened when I went to Switzerland, and I discovered that. But this was a different level of discovery. I kind of knew what it felt like to find myself, but I still, now and again, especially when I think back with my parents and my mother and stuff, I was still being somebody else that I thought someone wanted me to be, as opposed to just being me.
Yeah, it sounds like a particularly effective magic mushroom ceremony without the magic mushrooms.
Yeah. I think we tried to order some in, but there weren't any available.
Okay, I should hold meat. I have sauces, don't you worry. Yeah, no, yeah, obviously we jest, and psychedelics should only be used sort of, yeah, in controlled situations.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it sounds like an amazing event. I'm sorry I couldn't make it this time round. I know you'll be hosting it annually though, and there will be daily events as well. So I
Twice a
think,
year, yeah. So we have every April, and I think it's November the 1st to the 5th this year. So we'll have twice a year, we'll be having the event, plus we'll be doing day events in between to give people tasters of what it's like to experience it. But, that is just going to be a taster. It won't be the same as being, away, with a group of people having the constant conscious connection.
oh, of course not. You can't expect that sort of immersion in one day. Although, to be honest, it's sort of sunny Wales. It's probably not a bad experience either. Um, so what we'll do for those listening, if anyone is interested in Awake, we'll link to it in the show notes, and yeah, just get all the URLs in there for anyone who would like to follow up. Okay, Simon, I think I better get us back on track, others will be here all day. I'm sorry, I'm like a magpie. I just see something shiny and I'm off on a tangent. So, yeah, make of that what you will. Okay, I think that was kind of a really nice segue to what I'd like to start talking about next, which is this concept of stress, and which will also be great for the rest of the conversation. Now, everyone's heard of stress, of course, and it's essentially what it is, and that it's sort of an issue in high amounts, and that it can sort of damage our bodies. But I think what most people sort of fail to realize is that we do require a certain amount of stress to function. Can you break down, obviously, sort of with your understanding of stress, having worked or working with Samten, what stress is and why we need it to some extent optimally function, but then also why too much of it can be an issue.
Yeah, I definitely can. I think, like, from myself, I'll have my own view on it. I'm not a medical practitioner, so for me, it's just the way I've come to learn it, through my own ways of dealing with stress. I've had a lot of dark times myself. I've been rock bottom a few times in my life, and yeah, I've had some really dark times, dark thoughts. So for me, stress is pressure, right? It's pressure on our mental, physical being. And essentially, we release chemicals like adrenaline and cortisol. And these generally happen when we're in a flight or fight response. Now, stress is positive, right? Because like when you become motivated, when you become focused, when you want to grow through personal growth, having stress is good because you're putting yourself under pressure to complete something, to achieve something, to go somewhere, right? So that is not a bad thing to have that. The problem kind of really comes where we remain, yeah, in flight or fight for long periods of time, and we go into chronic stress really, and that is for prolonged periods of time. That's hard then, because when you're in that state, it kind of can trigger also like health conditions that you've got. If you've got underlying health conditions, with your heart, with your blood pressure, it could be a digestive system, many different things really. That's when it really affects us. And what some of us tend to do then is we turn to bad habits because we turn to things to relieve our stress. So it could be drink, it could be drugs, it could be overeating, it could be over consuming TV programs and sitting, it could be doom scrolling. Yeah. So we naturally look for something to give us a dopamine hit to keep us going. And then when it falls off, we kind of sit ourselves in this state there really where we become stuck. And that's really how I would explain how stress is. So it is a good thing, but when you allow it to take over, um, when your body really when you start releasing adrenaline, um, at first is not a bad thing. Even when you produce cortisol at first is not a bad thing, but too much of it can outbalance your system, and then it affects your serotonin levels, which puts you out of balance. And with that, I think people almost feel lost. They feel like they're not able to do anything because they're in this position where they're all out of balance, and they're like, right, I don't feel confident now. I don't feel focused now. I don't feel I can do something. And I think that's why stress is such a major player in people's lives today.
Oh, yeah, no, it definitely is. And I'd love to sort of help wrap that up for the audience in a second. But do you think, were there any stresses? I mean, you chatted about your arterial fibrillation earlier and your heart condition. Um, was that congenital, and did that sort of first appear when you said 28 was when you first started experiencing symptoms? Was that correct?
Well, I started experiencing I think my age, yeah, it must have been,
Late 20s
yeah, it was,
ish.
yeah, 27, 28.
Okay.
I used to work out a lot, um, and I used to work hard. So I used to do a lot of hours in the corporate world. Um, and I used to go to the gym 5, 6 days a week, working hard. And I wasn't really ever a big drinker. Um, but we had a newborn. I must have been 26 when Brandon was born. So it was like, you know, I was a newish relationship. I'd bought a new house, had a new baby. Um, and I was definitely a lot of things going on in my life. But the heart condition is something that people have when they're not stressed. So I'm not sure it was caused by that. But what it did do
Of
was
course, yeah, just exacerbated. I'm sure it was a sort of
hugely,
a
hugely,
congenital issue, but yeah.
yeah, hugely exasperated it. I remember being in periods where, obviously, until I really understood what was happening, all I know is that I would be there and I'd feel dizzy, yeah, and I would be like kind of burping a lot because there'd be a lot going on in my chest, and it was trying to operate still because I didn't know what it was. So I'd be trying to operate as I would, and I remember times, where there's one or two times where I remember when Brandon was playing me up, and I'd say to him, "Look, you've made my heart go now," because the anxiety of thinking it was going to happen, and then it happened, and I got to the point, Rob, where if I stood up too fast, my heart would race. Now, at this time, I didn't realize it was racing 200, 230, 250. All I know is I'd stand up and I'd be like, and then like Brandon would ask me to play with him every night. Obviously, this went on for years. So this is where I had my probably one of my darkest depressions, because I got to a point in my life where I got up to 17 stone in weight and I could not run 4 or 5 meters without my heart going. And I was on medication. I'd had an operation, but it was still not right. So I literally used to get anxious about doing something, and then I would have this problem with my heart racing. Um, so yeah, it was definitely exasperated. Everything that went on in life was definitely exasperated, because that moment of stress would get it to go, and then I would be living in this period of time then where it was really really hard, you know.
Um, Sorry, this is where I sort of start getting a bit nerdy. Did you by ever sort of experience any sort of what's called orthostatic hypertension, sort of get up and sort of sit down? Did you get dizzy spells, lightheaded, or anything like that?
All the time,
Does it
all the
still
time.
does it still happen?
It doesn't now. No, it doesn't. They've managed to get my medication right. So I've been back in the gym for almost 2 years now. But that's from, so I've gone back in the gym at the age of 44, but I hadn't been in the gym since the age of 27. So it was a long time. Um, and in that period of time, I always experienced it. I remember being in the showroom when I was selling vehicles in Land Rover many years ago, and people would be talking to me, and I'd be talking to them, knowing I'm about to faint. And I don't know, I've always had this resilience where I know some people cleverly would probably go, sorry, I'm not feeling too good, I want to go home. Where I would just stay there and I would just breathe through it and try and get through it all the time. And the only thing I could do really was take long, deep breaths in through the nose and then slow, deep breaths out through the mouth to try and slow it down. Um, so, yeah, I experienced that a lot.
Yeah, it's called vasosyncope, that feeling of wanting to faint. And there's definitely some literature there that suggests that thiamine might affect the vagus nerve, the connection to the heart, and that those what's called sort of, again, that orthostatic hypertension. So when you stand up and you sit down, you feel like you're going to faint. So we'll have to send you some and see if it helps.
Yeah,
Or help. But yeah, anyway, again, sorry, off topic completely.
it's
I
all
think,
topic. It's all the same thing.
yeah, I think if I was to just summarize that for the audience, and your answer was perfect, by the way. The way I understand it is that when an individual sort of experiences chronic stress, they get, as you alluded to, an increase in these certain and various hormones, things like cortisol, glucagon, all of which, as well as catecholamines, again, these sort of tyrosine-derived neurotransmitters that you were talking about, things like adrenaline and noradrenaline or epinephrine for anyone listening from America. And in the short term, those are required. Those are hormones and neurochemicals that help the body to sort of survive in acute sort of settings and circumstances. If you're, well, we're not running away from tigers anymore, but if you have that desperate need to sort of get away from something, whatever it is. It provides that instant a surge of energy and release of glucose, release of dopamine to act quickly. But as you alluded to, when it becomes chronic, these stress hormones they start to negatively interfere with the immune system, and you cause an increase in inflammation. Simon, I'd like to segue into talking about meditation and how it can be used to help start mitigating stress, and how it can be a really effective tool in helping to, yeah, improve the symptoms that someone is likely struggling with when they're under a high load of stress. But first, would you mind sort of breaking down what meditation is? Because I think a lot of people still sort of just purely associate meditation with sort of sitting cross-legged in the sort of the lotus position with your fingers pursed together like this and humming or box breathing. And there's obviously a lot more to it than that. But yeah,
So, I suppose you've got mindfulness and meditation. People ask, are they the same thing? Um, Meditation is the practice. Yeah, really. Meditation is the practice that we take in being mindful. So it's practicing being present, and it doesn't have to be done sat on a cushion in the corner. Um, it can be integrated into everyday life. Just by, for instance, you could be in work, you could be sat there, you could be focusing on something on your desk. Yeah, you could settle yourself in your chair, wherever you are, feel the ground under your feet, feel the chair on your back, and you could just focus on an object and really start focusing on your breath. Feel the breath come in and out of your nose, in and out of your mouth, and you could take yourself to a present moment there. It could be done even when you're walking. I do a lot of my meditation practices through the day as well as it is might be in the morning or evening, because I'm in a position where I know I can meditate, which is my practice, and in my practice I become mindful, and in my mindfulness I become aware, and that awareness then allows me to see my thoughts and try and understand my body and where they're going, where it's leading me, to be able to frame certain things that are happening in my life to stop myself getting into a stressful situation and using that awareness. So for me, meditation really is the practice that we do in taking ourselves to the present moment.
And that's sort of where mindfulness comes into the picture. Is that correct? Obviously, mindfulness is a form of meditation. How does it sort of maybe differ from other types of meditation specifically? The way I see it, it's about trying to keep your mind centered on the moment. And like you alluded to earlier, you can sort of really meditate anywhere. And I personally find that for me, unless it's guided, walking meditations are effective. Could you sort of speak to mindfulness maybe a little more specifically?
I could. So when you put yourself into a position of mindfulness, so when you practice it and become more aware, then it actually produces better brain chemistry as well. And the parts of the brain that it improves are happiness, peace, and in that, it's so the amygdala in the brain becomes very reactive in a stressful situation. And what it does with mindfulness and becoming aware, it tends to stop that from becoming overreactive. Yeah. Which allows you to stay in a more peaceful state more regularly. So,
Parasympathetic, yeah.
yeah. So when we're in, you mentioned earlier, obviously we're not getting chased by tigers anymore. Well, some people are still, I think, but, you know, not many of
Hopefully not,
us.
yeah.
And when we allow our thoughts to overtake reality, when we're worried about what happened yesterday, or we're worried about what's going to happen tomorrow, but those two things really don't exist anymore. The only thing that exists is now. And right now, you know, you could be in a really great state. When you have that awareness that you come through mindfulness to understand that actually I'm not in danger right now. There is no danger. There's nothing attacking me. That I am peaceful. I am happy. I am in a great place right now. That's where we can then build the habit. And when we build a habit of understanding that, it gets stronger and stronger. And then we integrate it into our daily life. And it's almost like the unseen helper, because all of a sudden you're getting better at something that you don't actually notice you're getting better at, because it's really hard to measure how many times I've been stressed a day, right? But mindfulness is the key really to unlocking the door to happiness and peace, and coming away from the unreal thoughts, the negative thoughts, and living in the present moment.
Okay, so if I understand this properly, and please correct me if I get it wrong, so I probably will. What mindfulness is doing is it's sort of helping to get you momentarily into a more sort of parasympathetic or rest or digest state that then allows your mine your body to sort of upregulate the sort of state of neuroplasticity to sort of increase your, not maybe not awareness, but your ability to learn, to take in, reinforce, to develop new habits that you can then utilize on a sort of a more sort of unconscious basis going throughout the day. Is that sort of ish a decent overview?
Yeah, 100%. I think there's so many areas of our, we talked about earlier, there's so many areas of our chemicals, so many chemicals that are affected by our thoughts, by our state of mind to where we are. If you can, you mentioned, if you can keep yourself in a parasympathetic state more often, or even bring yourself back there quicker, you know, then you become stronger, you grow more grey matter in your brain, and you strengthen that part of you. It's scientifically proven that, there's been many, many tests done, a lot of MRI tests and scans to show that the grey matter in your brain can grow and increase, and then you can build that habit. And then it's almost like, becoming stronger at the gym. And then when you're going having to lift something in your house, or you're carrying the bags in or doing something, all of a sudden things just become easier and they become more natural. And that's really what mindfulness is. It's just about awareness of where your mind wants to go, but where you actually are, and bringing yourself back to that present moment, reducing the stress from your body, which then has all the positive effects opposite to the negative effects of stress, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely, and it's just interesting that you sort of brought all of that up. There's a relatively new field of what you might call medicine, I suppose, being spearheaded by a guy called Dr. Leo Prembach, who is a medical biochemist, and it focuses very much on this link between psychology, immunology, and the nervous system, and how when the mind essentially is out of sync, and you're in this sympathetical fight and flight mode, that you then really start to drive this immune system dysregulation, like we were talking about earlier, which then drives the development of disease. And it just speaks to how powerful the tools like mindfulness are in helping to get you back into this parasympathetic state, like you alluded to earlier, and allowing the body to then refine that homeostasis. I suppose, Simon, this is probably a great time to start talking about Samten. As I mentioned earlier, I've played around with the free trial offline, and yeah, it's amazing. I do like it. It's simple. It's clean. The only other app that I've sort of that's come close to it for me anyway is it Sam or Dan Harris, one of them, and his waking up app that was also effective, but 4 times the price. So I mean, the fact that yours isn't is a bonus. Um, can you sort of talk us through your sort of involvement in the company, and then uh, yeah, what sort of sets it apart? I know that you have Geelong, Tabutin, Timpton. I'm going to butcher that involved. Um, but yeah, how is Samtan, excuse me, different? And yeah,
So, Samten was born many years ago, actually. It's still pretty much in the startup stage, I guess, because of different reasons. But it was born many years ago. So, one of the co founders, Jamie Watkins, he broke his back running a marathon. He's still completing the marathon.
how do you
And
manage that?
I know. And then after that, he then took up yoga, and he took up, a lot of mindfulness practices really to get him through a tough moment. In which case, he found himself in a monastery. At this monastery, he found Galong Tupten. And um, Jamie had been in the tech space for a long time. And he said to Tupten, I'll build it, you be the teacher. And they said yes. So, hence, that was it. They built something that was referred to as a bike with no handlebars, I suppose, where the idea was there, um, but it couldn't get it to work. So I then came along, I invested in the company. And at first, I didn't know if I'd have any involvement in the company. I didn't invest to be a part of it. I invested to invest because I really loved what it stood for. Um, and I was on my own journey of looking at myself really and growing. And then once I had done that, I couldn't help want to be involved. One, because it was such a great project, and two, that Jamie Watkins was kind of, don't know the best way to put it really. You just want to be around him, you know? So yeah, that was it. I got involved, and then somehow it just kind of snowballed into a point where I helped lead quite a few of the areas we were pushing on, and then become the CEO. And now I lead the company. And over the last few years, Samten's never really had the full focus. We released it. We've had I think we've had tens of thousands of sessions completed by users all over the world. Um, but there's something about it which push on to your question really of why it's different. Is I was running a festival company, Jamie was doing other stuff, and I left that festival company a year ago really to focus on Samten. And in that, we re-strategized. And the USP for me of what we are is we got the educational platform. So we got a 30-day foundation journey, which really helps teach, guide people to learn the art of what meditation and mindfulness is, but also how you integrate it into daily life. And in that 30-day program, we take you through step by step, and they're all guided by Tupten. They're all separate guided meditations. And really, the aim is to help build a habit. So we offer it now not just to consumer, but also to employees and companies, so they can help their employees become more compassionate to themselves, to others, more productive, more efficient, and kinder, which help them with less stress in the workplace, and more recruitment, sustainability for the companies, really. So in that, there's like another 150 sessions. And for instance, there's one of them which is on motivation. And in there, Tupten it's almost like a life coach at the beginning. He talks about motivation and the opposite to that, which is procrastination. And then through procrastination, um, the negative side of that, and the fact that we haven't got a lot of time and we need to get on with stuff and we want to achieve things, and help you then find your motivation. Then you move into a meditation with him, and you find your breath and you get into the present moment. And I think that's why I think we're different. Like what I kind of say to people is Netflix, you turn it on at 9 o'clock, you don't choose your film to 9:30. 10:30, you pause it and you watch the rest tomorrow. Right? There's some companies out there, like one company is $1 billion wellness tech company, the first one, and their app is amazing visually. What they've got content is brilliant, but it's not the direction we want to be in. Our direction is we want to be almost simple, stupid, if you want to call it that. Yeah, we just do what we say on the tin. Like, I think what we try and remember is people come to us to practice and also to help with overwhelm. What we don't want to do is increase the overwhelm. We don't want to give people a million options that they're all of a sudden, their eyes are open. They're like, oh, I don't know what I want to do. This looks great. This looks great. That sounds great. Oh, I love that. There's a celebrity. There's an artist. It's like, that's not what we want to be. We just want to be very simple. You come in, you do your practice. You feel a certain way. You go in, you find it, you do it, you get out. And you just get on with your day and integrate it into your daily life, as opposed to a platform where you're just scrolling through looking for cool things to practice. And that's why we're different. And for some people, it'll be exactly what they want. And for others, it'll be a million miles away from what they want. But there's 8 billion people in the world, so there's plenty of people for all of us to help. And if we all do a little bit each, then collectively we achieve our goal.
Yeah, no, I think it definitely is an amazing platform. And what I really like about it for someone who really struggles to meditate, because me trying to keep my mind on anything is a mission, is the fact that you can the first couple of sessions, you just incrementally build up it from a time perspective. And I think the first one is 5 minutes, and then it's 7 minutes, etc. So it really helps you to sort of ease into it, opposed to just sort of what I found. I've tried a few apps, and a lot of them just sort of throw you into the deep end, and you've got to sit there for 20 minutes trying to sort of really kind of just concentrate on what you're supposed to be doing. And as you've alluded to, a lot of them have influences in there. You've got your Russell Brands, etc., and then you end up just sort of getting distracted and doom scrolling through the various programs, trying to find something that actually you resonate with. And by the time you've done that, you might as well have given up, because your time to meditate's long gone, and you just sort of got confused by the various options. So yeah, no, I think it's, I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass, I promise. I think it's an amazing platform, and it's definitely worth people's time and their interest. I think I've noticed a few times in the app that Tipton has sort of pointed to the fact that it's non-religious. Now, I'm someone who's slowly starting to explore my faith, my spirituality, and it's never really crossed my mind that meditation is in any way anti-religious, although it appears that it probably is, and that there's at least some a fraction aspect of the community who does have an interest in. Maybe I'm just naive, but could you maybe explain why, or what are your views on why people with particularly strong religious backgrounds maybe have an issue with meditation and see it as something to veer away from?
I haven't come across a lot of pushback really in my conversations with anybody, but some people see Buddhism as a form of religion that kind of is synonymous with meditation, and there's a balance with that you know it may go against their beliefs, and for them that's not it doesn't suit them. Like I just try and break it down simply. It's a technique about breath. First thing we do when we come into the world, and the last thing we do before we go out, is breathe. And when we breathe, and how we breathe has such an impact on us as human beings, you know, that it's the one thing that if we could become better at breathing, although we do it naturally without thinking, if we could become better at understanding our breath, then it would make us feel better. And if we can feel better, we can make others feel better, and then we can help, you know, enjoy life a bit more, be a bit happier, be a bit more at peace. So the religious side of it, I don't really pay that much attention to. I just think it's breath, and yeah, that's kind of my answer really. Might be a bit long-winded for you there, Rob, but that's how I see it.
No, that's perfect. And it just sort of, I suppose everyone's going to have their own take at the end of the day, but I don't see why there should be an issue with it. As you've alluded to, it's just a practice that is being developed or over eons to help individuals find their center and find this parasympathetic state. And I suppose maybe that's the fault of the media to a large extent. The fact that it's been portrayed as something that is, I suppose, anti-Christian for the most part, and it shouldn't be, which is definitely something I think people, and maybe this sounds a bit harsh, but sort of just need to realize that it's not about, it's not about choosing sides or losing focus on your God, whoever that is. It's just about finding balance within yourself.
But some of these people, see, Rob, they'd find peace in their way, right? You
Yeah,
know, they could be reading, let's say, a Bible or a Quran, or they could be reading that, and if they're peaceful at that time, if they're in a parasympathetic state and they're trusting that situation, they're maybe achieving exactly the same state really as we say the breath work can achieve. So there's no right or wrong. I think it's
Definitely not.
each to their own really to find a way of getting their mind into that state.
Yeah, definitely. Simon, you've been a star, but before I let you go, I'd just love to run you through a few rapid fire questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Perfect. Okay, so morning or evening meditation, which you prefer?
Prefer morning, but I do also do quite a bit through the day.
If you could recommend one book on mindfulness, if you've got any favorites, what would it be?
So the two books really, I don't know if it's seen as being mindfulness, but Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, is a huge. I've done it twice now, and it's like 12 hours long on Audible because I can't sit and read. I'm not best at that. That's a profound human being. That's still giving us all so much stuff today. And then Galong Tupton's A Monk's Guide to Happiness. You know, like Tupton is 30 years as a practicing monk, sat 6 years in retreats, taught all over the world to all the largest companies, to thousands of people. And he, again, is a profound human being that I would recommend anybody to read his book.
Perfect. If someone is skeptical about meditation, what's the first thing they should try?
Meditation.
Fair enough.
it is. That's all you could do. Really, is just practice it. You're already breathing. You're just paying attention to breath as opposed to just breathing normally without paying attention.
Yeah, okay. And last one, what is the biggest mistake people make with meditation when they first start?
So this one, I think people expect their thoughts to stop, and because they haven't stopped, they think they're doing it wrong. Now, it's like going. I use this train to the plane analogy for lots of things, really, in life. Um, when we're in the train, everything's like fast, right? Everything's going super fast. You look out the window of a train, you'll see something for a split second, right? Gone, gone, gone. When you're in a plane, we go faster, right? But we have a better view and everything looks slower. So how can we go faster in something, but everything looks slower, right? And it's because of where we are. So even though we still have thoughts when we're meditating, yeah, we just ignore them and we go to breath and they come and they go, they come and they go, and we just got to ignore them. It doesn't mean we're doing it wrong. It just means that we're just human, and that's how it works. And allowing yourself the time really to have your intuition take place, because sometimes you'll think of things that you've been going so fast you didn't even have time to think of. You think of something, you might have your best idea you've ever had that has been traveling around in 80,000 thoughts every single day and they're moving so fast you can't grab it. And then all of a sudden you slow them down and whoosh, there it is. Actually, I'll hold on to that thought. So I think that's the one thing for me. People think that the world is going to stop, and it doesn't. It's just you going into a present moment.
That is the perfect place to end, I think. Simon, where can people find you in Samten if they want to sort of explore the app further?
So you can find us on the App Store and Google Store. Just look for Samten, Samten, and you can download us. We have a new version of the app coming out as well shortly. And then you can find us at mysamten.com, which is our website, which will tell you more about how we work with education sector, how we work with the corporate business world and people. And you'll also find us on Instagram, where you'll find us on there under mysamten as well. So yeah, feel free to join our community. You can sign up. We produce newsletters, etc. And for myself, you can find me as Simon Delve on LinkedIn, where I probably put a lot of content out, and happy to speak to anybody who might want some more information.
Perfect. We'll be sure to link all of those links in the show notes. Simon, thank you so much for coming on today. It was an insightful conversation, and I look forward to having another one soon.
Lovely. Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it. Appreciate the invite.